I think there is a considerable amount of work that we need to do to realize the promise that has been made available to us by the approach of both governments to building this relationship forward. Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan made the point that the relationship is flourishing on the key sectors that the government is tasked with taking forward, which is the political relationship, facilitating a strong trade and economic relationship, ensuring parliamentary cooperation, ensuring a larger strategic convergence. The UK's integrated review and the refresh of that clearly set out the value that the Indo-Pacific has to a global Britain and the opportunity for the UK in India's rise and how that matters to the UK's integrated review and its Indo-Pacific tilt. Similarly, from our perspective as an Indo-Pacific nation, the UK's considerable interest in the region is important and indeed central to the notion of a greater effort to create a genuine rules-based order in the large maritime domain that spans everything from not just Hollywood to Bollywood, but actually Hollywood to the coast of Africa. So if you look at that as the opportunity, I think it is pretty clear that there is a considerable amount that both nations need to do. So let me set in that context, if I may be direct, a certain sense that both governments have that the defense and security relationship has not so far lived up to the strength of the rest of the political relationship. And I think this was one of the reasons why the defense pillar was given so much prominence in our roadmap 2030. The reason for this is to find ways in which we can rebuild a defense relationship that takes forward the current realities of where India is, where the UK is, where both our nations are as in the larger global discourse. I would say three factors that need more work on our perspective, from our perspective certainly, in the defense and security relationship. The first is the opportunity to make this much more of a two-way relationship. What do I mean by that? For the longest time, our defense and security relationship has been plagued, shall we say, by the presence of third parties or the actions of third parties in our respective neighborhoods or in areas of our concern. It's important that we put in a greater effort to make the relationship about India and the UK, rather than allowing extraneous relationships to come into play. That is, of course, majorly a role for the two governments to do, but I think the intention of having our relationship hyphenated only by each other is critical. The second is technology. Today we live in a world in which the growth and proliferation of value chains of production, as COVID showed us, requires us to now reinvestigate and reinterrogate how broad-based do we want this to be. The reason why many nations are reshoring or friendshoring many of their value chains of production is precisely because of the importance of the realization that no one country can control all technologies, and it's critical therefore for us to work with partners of choice on technology. A third T is trust. I think the effort by the two governments is to build political trust, but the defense and security relationship between any two countries is predicated on the highest levels of trust. Ultimately, warfighting equipment, security equipment is always going to be equipment that you will either procure or build with people whom you invest the greatest amount of trust in. So this, of course, is also a call to industry to be able to stand up to that trust, to be able to ensure that any intellectual property that we work together to create or to share or to procure from each other, any products that we procure from each other, are handled with the highest level of sensitivity and with the greatest amount of concern for building that trust through the actions of the trade and investment relationship. Finally, as a third factor, one of the three factors I wanted to highlight as challenges that we have between us, is the absence of enough early successes. We need to have successes come out of your actions together as businesses to be able to pick those and make a case for the relationship moving forward. I think the Chief of Defence Services here, Admiral Radikin, made that point very succinctly, that we need to pick winners and we need to get successes out fast. This is going to rely on businesses on both sides to be able to identify, proceed to come to agreements, and actually proceed to bring to fruition new and innovative ideas for partnership. 3 opportunities, let me flag. First, I think the convergence on strategic perspective is a critical part of the opportunity that we have before us. I think it has been a long time since the UK and India have been so closely aligned on the nature of the world that faces us and the opportunities that the current geopolitical hinge moment signify. If we were to look at this as an opportunity for converging the UK and India, I don't think you would find a more opportune time. So therefore, it is important that we seize this day. The second is research and science and technology. Today we are at a unique space in our nation's histories in which there are competing and indeed parallel efforts underway in our technology spheres, where Indian private sector industry has now been incentivized to also invest in defense technologies and defense investment to produce for the Indian defense industry, but to produce high quality, indeed world-beating quality products, ranging from communications to drone systems to armor for soldiers to metallurgy solutions for gun systems, etc. So this is also an opportunity, therefore, for British partners who may be looking at some of these technologies in their own country to work with us. And for all of this to work, I would suggest that we build as an opportunity on our strengths. Our defense forces are configured on similar lines. Our defense forces have strong histories of having worked together, and it strikes me as being something of a loss that we haven't actually picked up as much as we could have, building on those traditions of the long history of cooperation between our defense services. I mean, frankly, many of our regiments are designed using the old British model. Many of our regiments use, shall I say, Fauji speak in the same way that you do. It's a particular form of English which I suspect most civilians don't actually understand. But it is quite remarkable how, with all of that connectivity tissue between us, we don't actually seem to have developed enough of an opportunity to build off that. Let me close with 3 quick suggestions. I think India and the UK, and this is work for all of us, need to think of strengthening our partnership on critical and emergent technologies, the way we've done with the US, the way we've done with other key strategic partners, the way you've done with the US too. Maybe it's time for us to have our own ISET partnership. The second is two-way business partnerships. A lot of Indian companies are now directly bidding for business opportunities in the Indian defense market. Maybe British companies could join them for the bidding processes in India, but equally invite Indian partners to come up here and bid for business opportunities in the UK. Nothing creates trust more than the capacity to have two-way trade. And finally, as I suggested earlier, low-hanging fruit. We really need to have quick wins come out of these opportunities, all your efforts to come here and to make business work. I'm sure I can speak for my system when I say we will be very, very forward-leaning in wanting to help you make those quick wins happen. And I'm sure you will hear from your British colleagues. You certainly don't need to have more proof than the fact that you have both the FCDO and the the Ministry of Defence present here in full strength to support you, to recognize that the India-UK partnership is really at a hinge moment. We look forward to making that hinge pivot in the right direction.